Hi everyone, this is Maor Levi, and today we're gonna get a deep look into my new track Alone with Brandon Vendetta and Ash Nova on the vocals on Injuna Beats. The story of the track starts when every time I go to LA, I usually visit Brandon and I stay at his place, and we're trying to like hang out and make some beats. And we finally had the time to make something, and we came up with Alone a few months ago, 2022. And the story was we started writing this track. I started writing some chords, and then I asked Brandon, like, "Hey, what do you think? Maybe we should add some live feeling into it." As Brandon plays many instruments, we decided to add some guitars in the breakdown. And after we nailed the melody pretty much, and it was to our taste, we figured, okay, we really need some vocals here. I was going through some stuff on my computer, some acapellas and samples that I had, and I came across this vocal that Greg from Ash Nova sent me a while ago, which was supposed to be to be used in a different track, and I ended up not using it, but still had some plans for it. So we dragged it into the project, and you know what? It just magically worked. We did some minor modifications, but the moment we dragged it in, we knew that this is the one for that track. So today we're gonna dive deep and see how we made the drop. And let's just have a quick listen to the drop and see how it was made. So that's pretty much the drop. Let's start dissecting it. So the first sound is the squelch bass, which is this sound right here. So the original sound was consisted of at least I think 4 or 5 samples. It was a bunch of serum wave tables and another sample, and they were divided into 5 different samplers. Basically, the sound sounded very staticky to us because we were using samples. So we figured, okay, we need to like make it move somehow and make it sound a bit more organic. So what we did in the original project, the only reason why you seeing all audio is because we really had to divide the project into stems because there was so many ideas and the computers were lagging, and we couldn't work on it properly. A lot of automations and such and plugins that we had to break it down to audio and make it easier for everyone. So in the original project, what we did is we took an EQ and pretty much automated the bends to create this phasing effect, which you can hear here. So that effect is basically just a bunch of EQ bands moving with each other and automated. And then we did some extra processing in this project with the final mix project, and I'm going to show you what we did. And yeah, so the first plugin that we have on the chain is the Melda Saturator MB. Amazing plugin, one of my favorites. I think every Melda plugin is a favorite of mine, but this one, you get a lot of control over sounds because of its multi-band capabilities. So the low band is obviously bypassed because we have a sub bass attached to that sound. So I didn't want to touch the sub bass. I didn't want to touch this range of frequencies because it was important to keep the sub intact. The mid range, we boosted some in the input, dry and wet control, and then took some volume, -3, -3.5 almost, and then +3 on the input, and you get this. And then we have the high band, which is pretty much creating the crisp of that, the crispiness of that sound. We have a 4 dB input, and then we have a -12 output, and dry and wet almost all the way up, and another -1 ticking away here. And this is what it sounds like. I think this part is very, very crucial for that bass, that crisp, because it's what gives it the color and the punch and the character. So we had to emphasize that part as well, and that tool is perfect for that. Up next on the chain, we have the ozone equalizer, and we're using the pink noise reference over here. So I'm taming down a little bit of the low end, then boosting a little bit on the low mids and the mid range. Again, really slight. I think this one is on 0, so not even boosting here. Then taking away half a dB of top end. After that, we have another EQ, boosting the low end once again because I took some. I boosted again, cleaning the mud here around the 120 area. Usually I clean around 160, but in this case, we had to clean around that area because it sounded a bit too boxy. And boosting a bit of the top end again. And then we have standard clip just to control and clip the sound, make sure that it's leveled. And after that, we have the Pro L2 on aggressive mode with fast attack, fast release, just to kind of put it in place and bring it forward. And yeah, we just wanted extra control on that sound, so we added those plugins, and as you can see, everything's doing something really, really small. Let's move on to the next bass, which is the foghorn bass. That is a sound I programmed in Serum, and it consists of a sine wave and another digital wavetable, which I forgot which one, to create that kind of a crazy sound. So that sound is really, really cool. And we figured, okay, we need to have some aggression here. So this one was perfect. So I'll show you the chain. The chain is pretty much almost identical to the squelch bass, purely because we wanted to keep both in the same space and kind of want to make them unified. Because if you notice, the concept of this drop is a very, very question and answer kind of thing, where you have one bass line and the other one kind of answers and completes it. So we had to use identical chain, but obviously process a bit differently because they're two different sounds still. So the first sound on the chain, we have an EQ. I usually use that just to kind of low pass and create basically a filter. After that, we have the melodic saturator once again, but this time I bypassed the low band and the high band because I want them unaffected because the sound was already pretty much aggressive and kind of similar in its space to the squelch bass. So we just did the mid-range once again, +3, -1, and then a little bit of dry and wet here. After that, we have Soothe through just to control that, because it has a different tonality. We had to control it a bit better, which is this part. Very aggressive again, so we had to tame it down a little. After that, we have another EQ. This time it's on 30 dB, so we're doing dynamic EQ just to control a little bit of the mud, the low end, and the mid-range. Really, really subtle, but it does a lot of different. And of course, creme de la creme, we have the Pro L2 on safe mode this time because aggressive was not an option. It was just way too aggressive, so we had to go for whatever sounded better. And safe, in this case, sounded better. Let's move on to the next part, which is the send channel. The send channel is very, very important here. It's what gives those sounds their space and their stereo and pretty much their depth, if you ask me. What we did here originally in the original project was we had maybe 4 different send channels. One is doing delay, reverb, another one flanger, phaser. And we pretty much took all those 4 channels and grouped them into one, then compressed them and glued them together so we had better control and bring them forward in the mix. So let me play that channel for you guys. So yeah, pretty much a lot of effects ducking and obviously triggered by the bass lines. So they're carving some space for that. And yeah, let's see the processing on those. Again, because they've been through so much already, we just had to cut out the low end and cut a little bit of the highs on 30 dB. Once again, very aggressive, but was very, very necessary. If I'm gonna play you the sounds without the send channel, you understand what I'm talking about, how much space and how much depth it adds to the whole drop. And this is with the send channel enabled. Again, massive difference, and it sounds great in the mix. So that's how we did this. I want to talk about the relationship of the bass lines and how every time one of the bass lines triggers, it sounds different. We felt like if we kind of like loop that drop and repeat the same thing, we don't have any interest, any sense of complexity here, and that's why we chose to like kind of change the bass line every time it hits. So we have the first verse line, and then the second one is also a bit different. Then the third one. So a bit detuned, and again, another addition with some bass on top just to make it a bit different, but still somewhat is related to the context of the whole drop. Same thing at the end. So all those bass lines have that same kind of groove, and they do pretty much the same thing, but they're just modulated and designed differently, but still around the same source. So it's not a completely different sound, it's just a slightly tweaked sound. Same thing goes to the foghorn bass. We start with this one. Then we go to this one. Then we go to this one. And the last one. So everything here is just pretty much changing, but it's pretty much a question and answer kind of thing. And it worked really well. I feel like it made the drop super interesting already. So that was great. Now let's move on to the drums. The drums are also doing pretty much the same thing as the bass lines. When I'm saying the same thing, I mean the question and answer thing that I was talking about. So let me solo these so you can hear what I'm talking about and what they do. So the kick drum and the bass and the effects channel over here, which I'm going to talk about. So yeah, pretty much every 4 bars, the drum loop is different. And we did that based on the same principle as the question and answer in the drop. The drums here, they play a very, very important part, but as you can hear, they're also very, very minimal. And the only reason is because the bass line has such a massive dynamic range that it takes a lot of the spectrum of the song, so we couldn't really go crazy on the drums and add some hi-hats and crazy loops. And of course, we had to place them in different places in the drop so they kind of like shine through and not drowning with all the massive aggression that this bass line has. In between every 4 bars or every 2 bars, we have a little fill here, which is the effects stem over here. So pretty much like we had to keep it different every time, and I felt like that part was very, very, very. It took us a lot of time to make that actually. Like we had to go through many, many sounds, and we combined all those sounds into one channel just to make it easier for us to mix later. And yeah, if we could progress to the second part of the drop, you can hear that the drums also, they go obviously a bit more energetic, but they still change constantly. Yeah, so pretty much what I was talking about, question and answer. We added some rides, added some hi-hats, open hats, and all kinds of weird percussions, but it worked. And this was pretty much the whole concept of the drop. It was just to make the sounds interact with each other and create something that is not static and very, very straight. So this is pretty much it for Alone. I hope that this was informative for you guys and that you learned something and that you got a little bit of a glimpse of how we made this track and our thoughts and the sound selection and things we use and decisions that we made. So thank you so much. And Alone is out now on Anjuna Beats.